Well, Bob's been recording us. He likes these witty outtakes when he finds them.
It's easy.
So Chris, but we're talking to Joey in some ways about energy committees, right? Just so I know. I mean, with that hat on.
I talked to one last night in Rochester, and I just really quickly, it was so windy last night. I'm on there with my AmeriCorps member Becca, and then Becca White talking about Efficiency Vermont, and then all of a sudden everyone in Rochester froze up, and it was the three of us not in Rochester, and then one person with a battery in Rochester because their power went out.
Wow.
It was like an advertisement for a Tesla Powerwall.
Gotta love the Powerwall. We've got COVID relief money, we've got potential climate infrastructure money, and we've got a whole bunch of little communities around the state who don't necessarily have expertise in grant writing or planning or whatever. How should we be thinking about creating the supports that will help this money get out into all of the communities?
Are you kicking us off?
You want me to?
Yeah, badly.
Like I did last time. I don't want to hog the limelight.
Well, you remember last time? That was like 4 months ago. He puts a title over us so that it's his fancy script or whatever.
Mine will be a plane flying across with a banner behind it.
I still want
That could happen.
I want to see you jumping out of this drone that you're hovering on, Sarah. That'd be really cool. Okay, are we ready?
I think so.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's another Friday. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long week though. Crazy long days on Zoom. It's crossover week. So we've been at it from morning till night every single day. Yeah.
I was on till almost 9 o'clock last night. It was my eyes. You can see the bags under my eyes. Anyway, here we are. We're doing it.
Here we are. And this is an exciting thing to come together for on a Friday morning, because we've got a couple members of the Climate Council, people who are active out in our communities. And we've got a great topic to talk about because it's very hopeful and forward thinking, and this is going to be an opportunity for us to really imagine some of the great things that we can help our communities to accomplish in the coming weeks and months and years. So I want to introduce Joey Miller, who is familiar here. We've spoken with Joey before. She is at VNRC, and Joey, one of your colleagues from the Climate Council, is here. So introduce us and our viewers to Chris.
Good morning, Sarah, Senator Pearson, and it's great to be with you here this morning and with Chris Campany, who's the Executive Director of the Windham Regional Commission. I have known Chris and admired his work for many years, and he also is a member of the newly, created Vermont Climate Council, serving both, Chris, I'll let you say it, but on the Just Transition Subcommittee, which is really important, and bringing your wealth of expertise and your on-the-ground experience into this work. So it's great to be doing that work with Chris. It's great to be here with you all this morning, and it's good to be digging into this conversation. But Chris, tell us more about you and your different roles.
Sure. Glad to be here. Thank you for that very warm introduction. I was appointed by the Speaker of the House to represent municipal interests, or just basically provide a municipal perspective on the council. I'm the Executive Director of the Windham Regional Commission, and the state's regional planning commissions play an essential role in the state. As most folk know, there is no county government. So we provide this essential link between local, state, and federal government. And critically, we provide a lot of capacity to towns, especially the smaller towns, that just don't necessarily have the staff or even the volunteer capacity to do a lot of projects. So not only do we support them in planning across a broad array of areas, including community development, energy and natural resources, emergency planning, transportation, we also help them implement projects. And So the Wyndham region, we're constituted of by 27 towns in southeastern Vermont. There are 11 regional planning commissions in the state.
Well, I'm so glad you guys are here because we, usually on these updates, we try to tell people what's going on in Montpelier, and Sarah and I are something like the subject matter experts. But in this case, we don't know a whole lot, and so we're very dependent on you to give us the lay of the land. Basically, we're hoping we can talk about the federal legislation that just passed. What are we calling that? Can somebody remind me?
The American Rescue Plan.
Rescue Plan. Thank you. I knew there was a moniker. So that is pushing a lot of money to our towns and to our counties, and that's going to be tricky in Vermont. I'm sure Senator Leahy has been keeping his eye on that because actually New England states don't have robust county infrastructure. But we're hoping we can talk a little bit about towns and help. What can we do? What are the RPCs and others and town energy committees? Joey, we know you've been very engaged there. What can those folks do? Because it seems like, particularly in our very small towns, there will be great opportunity for people to help figure out where to spend these resources. Obviously, it's not every day that small communities have these kinds of grants coming in. And we're wondering if some of the money obviously can go towards infrastructure, climate, infrastructure, things like local foods, who knows, but investments that we can make that will stick around for a while and ideally stimulate the economy and build on climate infrastructure. So Sarah, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think of small towns like the little town of West Fairleigh that I represent, and they've got a small select board. The same set of 10 people seem to volunteer for each of the town committees, and they have a really tight budget, and it's really hard to raise more tax revenue. So what can we do to help these communities save on on their fuel costs, and that'll be a win-win. It'll be good for our municipal budgets and good for the comfort of the people who are working in those municipal buildings. And it'll be good for the climate to reduce that wasteful use of fossil fuels. So what ideas do you have out there? And, what are you hearing? What have we seen from the past about how to get this kind of investment out into small communities in Vermont?
Well, I'll start and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who is in a deeper, really important way working so closely with communities. But I mean, I would say people probably know that the American Rescue Plan, I believe President Biden signed it yesterday. So the ink might not even be dry. And my understanding is that, they're trying, there's still a little bit of uncertainty about the parameters around how that 1.9 trillion will be spent. But what I do understand is that there's probably some wiggle room and some agency that the state will be able to impart over where, how those dollars are directed. There's in the legislation, people know there's money for just immediate relief for people. There's going to be, I think, a $1,400 direct payment to people who meet the economic threshold. And so I think a big piece of this is just like immediate relief to people who need it in this still sort of very challenging moment. So direct relief to Vermonters and to people across this nation, putting money into people's pockets. It's going to things like vaccine rollout and to, putting food on people's tables and really important things like that. And then at the same time, there's going to be, potentially, hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to be rolling into the state of Vermont to, again, do those very critical things and, just emergency moment investments. And to your point, representatives and Senator, we're going to have the opportunity to direct some of those $1 million into our towns and into programs that really, sort of help Vermont and Vermonters be more resilient. I had heard that potentially up to $200 million directly to municipalities. And as you noted, Sarah, some of those municipalities are probably better predisposed to taking those dollars and investing them in things that might be for sort of multiple purposes. People may remember, and Chris can speak to this more clearly, that a decade ago we had the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Those dollars came in from that economic recession, and a lot of those dollars in Vermont went to weatherization programs to help low-income Vermonters in particular invest in weatherization for their homes, making them more energy efficient, affordable, comfortable, healthy. The same for our municipalities. A lot of municipalities undertook energy audits so that they could consider investing in weatherization. Some of them did, some of them didn't. So one of the things I wonder about is, are there municipal buildings out there, that need weatherization investments or energy efficiency improvements, including potentially HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air air circulation systems that not only help our buildings become more efficient, so you pair that with weatherization, but you help circulate air so that in general that's good for public health, and certainly in moments when you're in a pandemic like this, where there's a sort of a deadly virus, that really helps protect public health as well. So those kinds of creative investments, that's where I encourage communities to be thinking about, are there municipal buildings, are there, that could use sort of energy efficiency improvements, are there, those kinds of things. One thing I do want to say, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris, that I've been thinking about, working a lot at the local level, as you noted earlier, a lot of these towns, small towns, hardworking people that are volunteering their time and effort in service of their communities. So there's not a huge amount of people power, not a huge amount of capacity. We lean on Vermonters who volunteer their time and passion for these issues a lot. And I would say that, just capacitizing our regional planning commissions is one of the things I'd like to see some of those dollars used for. In the past, we've had, appointed energy folks that work just embedded in our regional planning commissions that can then be focused on helping their municipalities figure out what are the best investments that meet multiple purposes, that reduce energy consumption, that reduce fossil fuel consumption, that that help create more transportation options, that build more compact communities. I'd love to see an investment in some of those dollars go into our regional planning commissions to hire one or two people that will then help Chris as the executive director, who can't do everything, but other folks at our regional planning commissions really look at what are the longer term, best uses of this influx of dollars. Like, this is a once in a generation opportunity to have these dollars roll in through the American Rescue Plan, and then through this new infrastructure bill that's going to come out. So getting communities to think creatively about what they think they can do, and then also, I think, investing in our people power, in our infrastructure, at our regional planning commissions, and also, I would say, in our community action agencies. Our RPCs and our community action agencies are two of our most important partners, I would say, in the state of Vermont, working with a lot of other partners who are providing really important services. Those are some of my ideas, but I would love to hear from
Joey. You've set the table really well. So Chris, help us understand. I mean, I do think we hopefully will figure out some administrative money, because you can't just sort of dump tens of millions of dollars on communities and say, hey, go for it, right? It has to be, you need some expertise, you need some of the planning. Chris, talk to us a little bit about the RPCs. We're all waiting to understand the guidance that they're just, there will be strings attached to this money to some degree. Joey, you mentioned HVAC in municipal buildings. We know that that's been a priority for money coming directly to schools, as an example. And actually, Vermont already last year put some of our money towards those goals. But Chris, help us understand what the RPCs, your approach, and they are regional, I understand that. And then help us understand where community members can directly engage, like local town energy committees, like volunteers. You know, there's retired planners out there, there's retired engineers out there. If there's a moment where the community will come together, I have a feeling Vermont will utilize that moment. Can you help us understand where people can plug in and the approach, even though admittedly it's very early, as Joey said, the bill was signed yesterday?
Sure. So going back to what Joey was talking about with the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, that's actually a good example. You know, one of the roles that regional planning commissions often play is just helping communities even understand how to access funds and how to use them, just and translating the detailed rules around those things into basic municipal English, so they know how to actually access it. The other thing that towns often use regional planning commissions for is especially like with transportation and even hazard mitigation projects, is using us as municipal project managers, because oftentimes they just don't have the capacity to do the accounting and the reporting and the contractual, just all the stuff that you've got to do, you know, the purchasing and all those things that you have to do. And instead of reinventing the wheel with every town, like for doing energy audits for municipal buildings or something, if we can actually kind of aggregate the demand, put out an RFP for those services, and then you know, just basically kind of go through that process for them. That way, like in our region, you don't have, well, Somerset has a population of 2 people, so there's probably not a lot of weatherization that'll go on in town offices there. But for the other 26 towns, you know, that way each town's not going out and soliciting their own energy auditor or something like that. So that's from a process perspective. But the other thing, this is also an opportunity, I hope, to look at climate resilience and adaptation. And regional planning commissions, and sometimes they're also private contractors, but especially regional planning commissions often work with towns to develop their local hazard mitigation plans. And so there are plans on the books about where towns have the greatest exposure and greatest risks related, especially they're all hazards, so it's man-made disasters too, but also natural hazards. And in Vermont, that's especially flooding, though I would argue increasingly wind. And on the horizon, we may have more concerns about wildland fires. But I would suggest that, you know, in addition to working with town energy committees and whatever the way Vermont works is everything is intensely local. So some communities may have an energy committee. We can also help a town stand up an energy committee if they don't have one, but it may just be some other group that, like maybe there's a municipal building improvement, you know, committee or something like that we could work with. So, you know, so meet them where they are. So, and I think is definitely the opportunity to do you want to do the energy audit, because otherwise any other improvements, that tells you what your critical improvements are to have the biggest bang for the buck. But on the mitigation side, you know, it's not just culverts and other infrastructure like that. In some cases, you still have some municipal buildings that are at risk of either flooding or they're in a place where fluvial erosion is a concern. So I would say that's another area to look at. And critically too, you know, so those are the immediate term projects, right? Like actually develop, you know, try to quickly get in and do things to develop actual projects. But one of the bigger concerns that regional commissions frequently raise is that, you know, Vermont's principal planning goal is compact settlement. And the challenge is, without the infrastructure to actually support compact settlement, you can't make it happen. And so you can have all the right planning language that you want, all the right zoning bylaws that you want, but if you don't actually have the water and sewer, and I would add stormwater to it to actually make compact settlement happen, the path of least resistance is large lot development on class 3 town roads. And then you wind up with the habitat fragmentation, forest fragmentation, everything else that we're talking about. And so one of the things I would also encourage the state to look at is helping communities have the conversation about what will it take in terms of their plans, bylaws, but critically that infrastructure piece to make that happen. And that's a really hard conversation for a lot of towns to have, because you're talking about major investment that you then have to maintain. And so that's really a longer term investment. It's not enough to just say hire an engineer and come in and do a feasibility study and an engineering study. You need to plan the community too. What do you want to have in that compact settlement? Where does it lie? How does it lie so that it is flood resilient and fluvial erosion resilient? Look at all those pieces. I would say, actually master planning, developing comprehensive plans for those those compact settlements, and that will inform the engineering studies. And it might also then help better engage the community to be able to even have those infrastructure conversations. So those are the pieces that I would most recommend, and things that towns really do have the capacity to do.
Chris, I'm smiling, and I'll turn it over to Sarah in a minute, but Sarah knows I'm always trying to have my own information be connected, and in the Climate Solutions Caucus, one of our mantras is, climate impacts everything, and you got to look at tax policy, you got to look at health policy, et cetera, et cetera. You've just connected wastewater with emission reduction for me, and I really want to appreciate that. There's a town here in Chittenden County that's been trying to build a sewage and wastewater and water infrastructure to keep it downtown, and of course there's an emissions impact, as we all understand the value of compact towns. Sarah, we only have our experts here with us for a few more minutes. This is exciting because it's sort of we're at the beginning of the daydream process. Create your wish lists, everybody. Sarah, what else should we ask our friends before we have to turn this week's update off?
Excellent. So we will continue to have conversations as members of the Climate Solutions Caucus, and what's exciting is, we're already primed as legislators who are spread out among a bunch of different policy committees. We're already primed to be thinking about ways that we can make progress on climate in each of the different committees. As Chris said, wastewater now, and tax policy impacts climate. So we're already primed to think that way, and we will continue to work on that. And so what I would ask of the both of you and of anyone else who's out there watching is, if you see ways that that either through legislation or through collaboration with our community action agencies or our RPCs, ways that your community can get the help and support it needs, please do reach out to us. And then I guess the only other thing that I would want to ask our two guests today is, if someone's out there watching this right now, and maybe they have an idea that they have been working on with a group of people in their community, and they just don't know how to take it to that next step of getting some technical planning help, or getting some or figuring out how to access the funding, maybe to complete a sidewalk segment so that people in this area of town can walk to where their services are. If people have ideas like that within their communities, who should they be reaching out to right now to make sure that we're getting the ball rolling, so that we're ready to go when this money comes into the state?
Do you want me to start, Joey? So don't ever hesitate to call your regional planning commission, because if we don't have the answer, we probably know who does. So like if it's like sidewalks and that kind of thing, we can get you up to speed with what grants are available through VTrans, or Agency of Commerce and Community Development related to the planning work. We can also get you in touch with the community action agencies. Many of them have efficiency missions, and have the capacity to help with those projects. So we can also, if you don't, obviously contact them directly, but if you don't know who that is, we're happy to put you in touch with those folks.
Excellent.
I would just take this one moment before we close to say exactly what Chris said, and just echo that as a venue, but just to put a finer point on it, just to say this is a moment where we're talking about the American Recovery Act, and that's going to be more short term in terms of figuring out where dollars can go. There's probably going to be some nexus required to COVID, and then there's going to be a massive infrastructure bill. So getting people just thinking about what kinds of infrastructure investments might serve my community, might serve my region, might serve Vermont, and get creative if there's a way to have those be a nexus between, not only like hard infrastructure investments, but making us more resilient, reducing our carbon pollution, helping people access more local food, things that make us healthier, more, energy independent, more independent and resilient. Because this is a conversation, as you noted, that's going to continue to evolve. We look forward to staying tuned in. And I would just say all of that is in service too of helping the Climate Council with the legislature stood up and that Chris and I are on, helping us achieve our mission, crafting our plan by December of 2021, and then continuing the work and working to implement it. And, so this is all these are climate strategies as well, which is why I'm glad to be here this morning with you all having this conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing it. So thank you.
And if I can add just one other brief thing, I would encourage every community, the pandemic really highlighted who is marginalized in our communities. And I would really strongly encourage towns, to think about how do you, going forward, what we learned about remote meetings, it can encourage increased participation, but it's not the total solution. So how do you, going forward, how do we better engage larger communities? And then the other thing I think we've learned too is going to people where they're at to engage them in the conversations. And that may not be a skill set every community necessarily has. That's another thing that regional commissions and other community service organizations, United Ways, others can help, think through how do you have those conversations so you're engaging with people who aren't always able to participate or haven't always been even known to participate. So.
Right. Such great ideas. This is a really exciting conversation, and thank you both for coming to join us. And hopefully the conversation has piqued some interest and seeded some ideas out there among our viewers.
Sarah,
Chris,
do you think,
close us out?
Sarah, is it because we've had guests that it's a little more hopeful this morning? Maybe we can always do that.
Well, I think you and I are pretty optimistic, but this has been really fun and exciting, and my mind is just churning with ideas and hope for these cool projects that we can bring to our communities.
I agree, and for folks watching, what the theme I take away is if you have ideas, and I see this in the legislature all the time. One person says, "Well, but what about this? Have you thought about what I said to you?" Frankly, they're the squeaky wheel, but it could be just one person. And if they have a good idea, they can bring it forward and really make change. And what Chris and Joey are highlighting is some of the ways that you can connect locally. If the select board blew you off, don't give up. If it's a good idea, turn to others. And this is a moment of community where we need community creativity to bring solutions forward. And we have some resources coming. So it is very exciting. Thank you both for joining us. And Sarah, always great to see you. And more to come as we learn about the guidelines and details of how these resources will get spread around the community. And thanks to Bob the Green Guy for helping pull these videos together and always making us look kind of pretty good.
He makes us look better than we would otherwise look, honestly.
There you go. I mean, it's not Bob's fault. He does a super job.
He doesn't have a whole lot to work with, but Bob, we really appreciate the talent that you bring to making this look a little more professional.
Joey and Chris, thanks for your time.
Pleasure to start our morning with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.